Hello and welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. I grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. This midweek episode we'll be going over the Demon Hunter, and more specifically its role, its specializations, PvP wise, where does it fit in, raids, mythics, does it have any pets, which it doesn't, I can answer that immediately, the roleplay elements, and then the pros and cons of the specializations, or the class in general. So, specializations, this is the, I'm just double checking my facts right here, I'm pretty sure it's the only class that has two specializations, which is a tank specialization in Havoc, and the DPS specialization is Vengeance. I'm pretty sure I'm getting them the right way round. I always get confused on which one's like the tank spec, which one's the DPS spec, but I'm pretty sure I got that right. The DPS spec is the one that we'll be mainly looking at, and that is Havoc. No, Vengeance. That is the Vengeance specialization. And in PvP, it's decent. It's somewhat decent. The thing that it lacks the most are defensives. You have Blur on a minute cooldown, which is very good. And you have your natural sort of defense, which is your dodge. So when you blade dance, you dodge automatically or dodge all of the incoming attacks and stuff like that. Vengeful Retreat is another one. You are immune to crowd control and take reduced damage while vengeful retreating. And then you obviously have Darkness, which is a big cooldown. It's a 3-minute cooldown in PvP, but it in my opinion, it is the worst big defensive cooldown in the game. And I think most people would agree with that. So if you look at most 3-minute cooldowns, you're looking at Pain Suppression, which is a straight up 40% damage reduction. You're looking at another 40% damage reduction in the Warlock's Unending Resolve. You're looking at probably a BOP, a Blessing of Protection from a Paladin. That's actually less than 3 minutes, and you have 2 of them if you take certain talents, and that reduces all physical damage taken, or makes you immune to physical damage taken. Whereas Darkness, you put a 8-yard radius of darkness on the ground. Okay, so it seems cool so far. It has a 50% chance to negate all of the damage from an attack. So if you take, a warrior executes you for 100k, you have a 50% chance to absorb it, or you take the damage. There is no in between. There is no damage reduction. This is why I think it's one of the worst cooldowns in the game, purely on the basis that everything else that has a 3-minute cooldown guarantees you something. It guarantees you a physical immunity. It guarantees you a damage reduction up to 40%. Whereas this, it's you're not doing anything. You could, if you're super unlucky, die from 100% to 0 in this. Like, if you're really unlucky and you're just getting the luck of the dice against you, you cannot absorb anything from your darkness. How crazy is that? And that's a 3-minute cooldown. So, in terms of this is probably one of their cons as well, to be honest. But in PvP, they do lack a bit of defensive, but their damage more than makes up for it. Their mobility and damage are very much up there with some of the best in the game. Damage-wise, if you want to shut anything down, you want to kick their I-beam. It's linked to their tier set. It's linked to everything right now, damage-wise. So if you can kick it, it's very good, or interrupt it in any sort of way. Because when they finish channeling it, they gain a lot of buffs, essentially. But yeah, they still do very good damage outside of that in Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is the weird thing. They probably have one of the best offensive abilities in the game with Metamorphosis, because you can extend the duration of it for every 80 Fury that you spend, I think, something like that, for 0.8 seconds. And this can you can essentially have Metamorphosis for a minute straight if you do your rotation correctly, because your I-beam gives you a certain amount of time of metamorphosis as well, etc., etc. So their offensive abilities are very good, but their defensive abilities are very poor. So they're kind of a mid-range at the moment. They don't really have many compositions that they can work with. They can work with Boomy DH. They can work with probably a melee cleave, monk, warrior, DK. DH DK is actually a very good comp. But yeah, they're quite limited to what they can run with, in my opinion. So, in terms of PvE, I think that they're fairly decent, but I think that they can lose steam very easily compared to the likes of like a Fire Mage, Augmentation Evoker. You're not going to want to bring in a DK, you're going to want to bring in something more sustain, I would say, and more just passive cleave. So, Druid might be good, or even like a Lock or something like that, or, Outlaw Rogue with Blade Flurries, etc., etc. Roleplay wise, you're a demon. You look cool and badass as a demon. You have wings. You can wield war glaives. You can go for that whole, no shirt kind of vibe. Although I have seen a few transmogs where people do not wear a shirt at all, and it's like they've got a frying pan and a cooking hat, and they're just in their underwear. Them kind of transmogs are really fun. I'm not gonna lie, and they're hilarious to do. But yeah, the whole RP element of it is you are fighting a demon inside of you. Inside of your character is a demon that you are fighting. You control this demon essentially, and it is looking to break free, but you're kind of restraining it from doing so and just using its powers essentially. That's all you're doing. So that's the RP element for demon hunters. The pros are very much mobility and damage. Your mobility and your damage abilities are very strong. But cons are very much your defensives. You do lack the defensives and the team utility that a lot of classes bring. You do not have a lot of buttons at all, or a lot less compared to some classes, Restoration Shamans, Druids, etc. But yeah, you do not bring that team utility at all, and it's a bit sad, to be honest, that they don't have more, because they are such a really cool concept of a class that I think it's quite disappointing for them not to have more overall. But I would say it's one of the better specs that you could definitely get into as a newer player. I'm pretty sure there's no restriction on it now because they messed around with a lot of the levels. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you can just jump straight into it. It's a very good spec to get you off and running if you're looking to be a DPS, a melee DPS. It's very fun. It's very hyperactive, and you've got to be everywhere at once. You're jumping around constantly. It's one of them classes that if you've got nothing to do, you're still just jumping around for the hell of it. You can't sit still and wait. That kind of class. But that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening. As always, do check out everything down below, the socials, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, constant stuff happening down there, as well as go and support the show. The link is down there also. Thank you all very much for listening once again, and go a valor, friend. Goodbye all.